My last video documented the saga of fearless Greeks who sailed forth beyond their Hellenic borders in search of greater power and prosperity. This is the next chapter of the story of Magna Graecia. These adventurers who travelled in the frothy wake of their distant Mycenaean and Minoan ancestors, assisted by the peoples of the Levant and the seafaring Thalassocratic Phoenicians, began their journey on the Greek island of Euboea and settled peacefully on a trading post called Pithekoussai on the Italian island of Ischia. But that first chapter ended with the Chalcidians abandoning Pithekoussai and travelling to the Italian mainland. But what I didn't mention last time was that they travelled there with another allied group of Euboeans from a small Greek polis or town called Cumae. Of their leaders, Megasthenes was of Chalcis and Hippocles was of Cumae, and their ships landed together on the coastline opposite Pithekoussai in the region of Campania near modern Naples and the mythical site of Aeneas' first arrival in Italy. They established a true colony here, the first true Greek colony on Italy, to which the Chalcidians were given the honour of governing, and the Cumaeans the honour of naming, which was after their hometown. The new polis would be called Cumae. 0 points for creativity there. Speaking exclusively of Greek cities, Strabo the geographer tells us Passon esti presbytate ton Thessaliikon kai ton Italiotidon. It is the oldest of all those in Sicily and Italy. Now I feel a bit compelled here to stay impartial. While the presence of these Euboeans and later Greeks in Italy did produce marvellous architectural, scriptural and political advancements, their colonialization here wasn't quite as peaceful as their first experiment back on Pithekoussai. The Italic people who dwelt in the Campanian region at the time were called Oscans or Opici, and tutus the Hupocumaio nec Pesin. They were driven out by the Cumaeans. We know that dieten areten perimacheton ienesthait obedion. Because of the land's great value, it became hotly contested, and the Euboeans who wanted to live there laid an all-out attack against the local Oscans. It was a bloody affair, but the Greeks won, and thus new Cumae was born. The new Apoikia, or colony, became Cumae, and in time its inhabitants would become known as the Cumaeans, as referenced above. For now though, they're still technically Chalcidians, and this is still an extension of the metropolis of Chalcis back on Euboea. As with previous Apoikiae, the Chalcidians began their urban planning. Temples to Hera and Apollo were set up, and agora, roads, houses, and farmland all mapped out. Even the necropolis was plotted. And because a colony was unlike most of the polis back on Greece, which had grown over a longer period of time from when the understanding of such affairs was more limited, Cumae began with the potential to be truly great. Its methodical construction as a fortified trading hub and centre of power in Italy led it to be a regional powerhouse for centuries. Its location was perfect too. As said before, the land was very fertile and it was right by the sea, and the Chalcidians ended up building numerous ports or epinea around it. Needless to say, its wealth would grow rapidly. I also spoke of the Etruscans last video and their own territorial ambitions in Campania, so rest assured I haven't forgotten about them. We'll momentarily jump ahead in time here. I promise to come back to the next colony in a moment, but the cultural significance of Cumae in relation to the Etruscans is not to be understated. In the mid-8th century BCE, which is when Cumae was founded, the Etruscans dominated the northern Italian region of Etruria, but over the next 2 centuries they expanded south into Campania themselves. Before 700 BCE, their language had not been written down, and they didn't have an alphabet. So their relationship with the Euboeans of Pithekoussai, Cumae and later colonies was a game changer for them. They took not just any Greek alphabet, but specifically the Euboean one. Archaic Greek had a bunch of different variants to create their own. And even more interestingly, Euboean Greek, shown here, was written right to left. And so the later Etruscan alphabet, here, was also written right to left. And even though Latin would be written left to right, it is a direct descendant of this style. There's a fascinating lineage here of hieroglyphics to Phoenician to Greek to Etruscan to Latin, and probably some in between that I've missed. Anyway, back to the mid-8th century. Cumae was growing quickly, but the Chalcidians were keen to continue consolidating their power in southern Italy. They again sent ships out into the Aegean Sea, across the Ionian Sea, but this time didn't pass into the Tyrrhenian Sea as they had for Pithekoussai. Instead, they stopped just short on the eastern shore of Sicily. The 5th century BCE historiographer Hellanicus tells us Theocles ek Chalkidos meta Chalkideon kai Naxion Siciliae polin ektise. Theocles of Chalkis with the Chalcidians and Naxians founded the city of Naxos in Sicily. The fragment we found this information in is a bit sketchy. It's from his work The Priestesses of Hera at Argos, but Stephanus of Byzantium records it without mention of Naxians, and Thucydides ignores them as well in his telling of Naxos' founding. In any case, whether they were joined by Greeks from the Greek Naxos or not, the colony nevertheless became Naxos. If this was down to the Greek Naxian presence, the lack of imagination in this is just shocking by now. But the colony was established in 735 BCE, making it the second in Italy. They built here an altar to Apollon Archegetes, Apollo Archegetes, which means Apollo the founder. Theocles, the mortal founder, or oikistes, governed Naxos and promptly began establishing relationships with the locals, called the Sicels or Siceloi, hence Sicily. This was a first step and key driver of the eventual Hellenization of the whole island. The Chalcidians had now paved the way for more Greeks to get involved in this Italian colonization, and the next year, 733 BCE, the Corinthians set up a colony on Syracuse. Not to be outdone, Theocles sent out new Naxians led by Periήγησις and Cretaimenes from his colony to another part of Sicily, Zancle, meaning scythe due to its shape. It had possibly first been settled by Cumaean pirates, but the Naxian oikistai launched an attack on them and quickly expelled them. The following decade saw these Naxians spread out across Sicily into Catane and Lentini, now starting to use more force against the Sicels to seize more land. At the turn of the decade, nearing 720 BCE, the Chalcidians once more moved to establish a colony on the mainland, just opposite Naxos, Reggio Calabria, or Rhegion to the Greeks, taking it by force from the Italic locals. Rhegion became a supremely important colony, so in the next video I'll go into the rapid influx of other Greeks like the Corinthians who followed the example of the Euboeans and get a bit more detailed about the implications of this colonization on the indigenous peoples and the wider land of Italy and its culture. Thanks for watching this far. You're already, as I've said before, you're already supporting the channel more than I could hope for. I cannot reiterate that enough. If you'd like to support some more, know what's happening next on the channel, see clips of work in progress and other regular classically themed posts, suggest ideas, offer details, speak to me directly, anything, please consider a small donation to my Patreon page, or not. I just hope you enjoy the content. On to the next one.